Ballot drop boxes could make a comeback ahead of this fall's presidential election, and state Republicans working to overturn several vetoes by Governor Tony Evers. CBS 58's Emilee Fannon, WisPolitics editor J.R. Ross discussed that and more in tonight's Capital Connection.
We begin this week with the future of absentee ballot drop boxes. Why? Because they might be coming back for voters as an option, possibly in August and November. It comes after oral arguments in the state Supreme Court where liberal justices seemed willing to overturn a ban on absentee ballot drop boxes, which is a case that the court, which was then conservative majority, heard about 2 years ago on the same issue.
So there's a thing called precedent stare decisis. You're supposed to stick to precedents with the courts. But there are exceptions to that rule. And Joe Karofsky, liberal, basically laid out the case of why they would not follow precedent from 2 years ago because, in her words, what if we got it wrong? And she argued there's an impact from this, that there's a problem here. It kind of signaled where the court's going. Look, of the 4 liberals, 3 were on a minority or dissenting opinion just 2 years ago. We know the reasoning in this. Janet Prosewicz, the 4th liberal now in the court, she also indicated some issues with that ruling from before. So the writing is on the wall where they're going. My question is, how broad will this decision be? By that I mean, will it just be about drop boxes saying clerks can use them again, or will it give clerks more authority and how they collect absentee ballots this fall? There's another case for the court right now about Racine mobile voting van they used in the August 22 primary. A judge in Racine had ruled that was impermissible because it followed the rational and the dropbacks lawsuit from 2022. It wasn't supposed to be authorized in state law. Ergo, you can't use it. You have to have express authorization. Well, if the court says you don't have to have that anymore, what else will be allowed? And Rebecca Bradley, conservative, got at that during oral argument saying, okay, what's the limit? Could you use a cardboard box to get absentee ballots? Like, what's the restriction going to be? And that's what I'm watching is how far will this court go in this decision? We expect probably a month or so from now.
Right, and what will be interesting too is will it have an impact on voter turnout? We know, and during the pandemic, it was a widely popular option for voters to just drive by, drop their ballot in one of these drop boxes. But since then, it's trickled down quite a bit of the interest in voting by mail. Of course, it's still there for a lot of key voters, like voters with disabilities and whatnot. But will it have an impact on both parties of possibility of voter impact? That's what I'm watching for. Now let's move on to the Senate, who was in session this week, and they successfully overrode 9 vetoes on bills that Governor Evers previously rejected. Everything from PFAS contamination, addressing teacher worker shortages, and some election-related bills. But what we kind of want to talk about is basically what they did is kind of almost irrelevant because there's not a supermajority in the Assembly, and the Senate also kind of briefly erupted into chaos because Senate Republicans ended session without hearing from Democrats who wanted to bring some amendments to the floor, which they say would be, in a sense, trying to find compromise on some of these issues.
So that chaos is the sausage making of legislating sometimes where they're the rights of the minority, they want to be heard, and the majority, Republicans, didn't allow them to be heard. They were unhappy about that. The bigger thing here with these overrides is it's one step of the process, and this step was a lot of messaging. So Republicans are getting boxed in a bit about the PFAS bill, for example. $125 million has been set aside to combat PFAS, the forever chemicals. This bill would have set the parameters of how it was spent. Evers vetoed it. They've been a back and forth of you're at fault, no, you're at fault. Okay, there's messaging there. There are bills about things like police inquiries for police misconduct, a bill about John Doe investigations. That one is more of a messaging that we have these votes this fall, or let voters go to the polls. Brad Path in western Wisconsin is up for election. The one democratically held seat in the Senate that could be competitive, you may see a mailer that calls him anti-law enforcement. So that's what we're talking about messaging. The next step, though, is the Assembly. Right now, they're short. You have 99 members of the Assembly, need 66 for an override, but they're at 64 for now. So fast forward to August, Marcela Cabrera won a seat on the Circuit Court in Milwaukee County. She's going to have to resign, a Democrat. There's a special election right now in the 4th Senate District. 2 members of the Assembly, both Democrats, are running in that. If one wins that seat, she'll have to resign as well. That drops you to 97 members. It goes from 66 to 65. That means every Democrat in the Assembly is the deciding vote on a veto override if Republicans come back. If a Democrat's on vacation, it drops the number a little bit more. So what I'm getting at is they're teeing up the Assembly that if they have the numbers and the wherewithal to do it, they could come back. We're not expecting them to right now, but Remember, the session doesn't end until basically early January, so they have time if they want to come back and try this.
Right, and you talked about that special election, the 4th Senate District, because there are 2 Milwaukee representatives who are running for that seat after Governor Tony Evers announced finally the dates of that. And the 2 we're talking about is Representative Dora Drake and Representative Lakeisha Myers. Of course, that of the veto overrides will play into a factor, but there's a few caveats on how this special election will work, because they'll have to not only run once, but maybe twice.
Also, they are not going to have a fallback of their assembly seats. So the filing deadline for the fall elections is June 3rd. If this election happened, this primary at least, had happened before that, if either lost, she could have run for her assembly seat again. The problem has been we don't know which map is supposed to be in place. The governor, in signing the executive order calling a special election, declared we're going to use the maps I signed, that now the new line says fall. The problem is that map says, a provision saying it takes effect in the fall. This is an election this summer. Unless somebody sues, though, it's probably not going to be hashed out in the courts. We're going on the governor's belief this is proper. Okay, there's that piece. The second piece is we have 2 separate elections. The primary really always matters. These are very Democratic seats. July 2nd is the primary and the special election. July 30th is the general election. Then we have August again. You could have one candidate win in July and the other one in August. It's a, it's a different beast. So if you win in July, you're not guaranteed being a member of the Senate come January.
A little bit of messy. All right, that will do it for this week. Thanks so much for joining us.